All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you all. Well, I'm warmed by that recorded smattering. I must tell you that we're happy for another week in America. Ailing as we are, there is no one and no group we would rather ail with more than all of you. I was noticing in the chat early. I was kind of into the chat, just seeing who was around. I think there were just a couple of people in the chat, but there was quite a robust conversation going on. So I didn't really read all of it, but because I was, I'm pretty scrambled in the morning trying to get everything organized. But it's nice that everybody has found each other in our community. And this is a show born out of a Bay Area radio show that was very popular. I mean, I'm quite astounded that we don't still have it going on.
Do you know who I am?
Exactly.
Kind of a big deal.
But we took the whole crew here, and so a lot of Bay Area listeners and viewers are here. Kim was on that show, and Susie's on this show. Tony is my stalwart companion out of iHeart Radio.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. And Albert, of course, comes in. He's also from that show. So we've got quite a show for you. Mondays bring Gary Dietrich, the political ninja, into our midst. He'll be here in about a half hour. There is a lot about the Epstein stuff that is loathsome, disgusting. It's also bizarre and politically damaging, reputationally harmful to many. We'll get into a lot of those issues, both with Gary and then in hour two, someone who's written extensively and wrote about the Epstein International Human Trafficking Syndicate is what it was. She's written about it for years. And now it seems that much of what she's written about is exposed. Sarah Kendzior joins us in hour two. Yeah, she's a best-selling author, investigative journalist, brilliant. So she's with us on Mondays, and we're very excited about that. I guess it was Groundhog Day, which is a tradition we have in the U.S. For those who are watching from elsewhere, we have a few who watch from other countries. Here in the U.S., we like to subject an innocent rodent, I guess. Isn't that what a groundhog is, Kim? Rodent.
Yeah. I don't think they treat them very well, but Punxsutawney Phil popped out, and I guess we have 6 more weeks of winter.
Mm. But
the more interesting thing to me, and the stories I'm interested in hearing, are about you, because you were involved in the Groundhog Day movie. Is that right?
I was involved in the Groundhog Day movie. It is true, which is
what?
I know. I
haven't heard the story. I can hardly believe it.
Well, the movie is about a weatherman.
Yes.
Who has to go cover Groundhog Day year after year. You know, it's the same thing, and that part is true. In that, this is this bizarre tradition that I was just kind of saying. If you're, tuning in from elsewhere, this is what we do. We have this bizarre tradition. Somehow it's, at Gobbler's Knob, this groundhog comes out, and if it sees its shadow, etc. I mean, there's so much noise, so much crazy going on around this thing that there's no way this groundhog can emerge from the hutch with any kind of normalcy, right? Mm-hmm. But so they make up that part. But the whole thing has become sort of it's a commercial enterprise, a tradition, a custom. I don't know what it is. So they do this movie about Groundhog Day, and because he's a weather guy, they contact me because I was a longtime weather guy. And I was right there in Los Angeles. And so I'm contacted by Harold Ramis and Trevor Albert, the two producers on the film. And they said, we want to come by for the purpose of writing the weatherman part, because we haven't written that part of the movie. And so they came through my world, and Murray came through for like a drive-by. It was a real quick thing. So I didn't really have a extensive, great Bill Murray story. But those two were with me the whole day and night. And they told me the concept. You have to understand, at that point, it was just they're just still writing the movie, or at least parts of it. And they said, they told me the concept, and I just thought it's brilliant. It's effing brilliant. Some guy who's living the same day over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And if you look at what the writers say was the amount of time that Bill Murray's character was reliving the days. It's very interesting. Like, what did you see the movie Groundhog Day, Kim?
Oh yeah, I've seen it more than once. I really like that one.
So how long do you think he was reliving that day over and over and over again? Remember, before you answer, he becomes like a concert pianist. Remember, he's living, doesn't he? I mean, Tony, did you see the movie?
Oh yeah, I love that movie. It's great.
Yeah, but doesn't
he's
by the end,
he knows everything on every second from every person. Yeah.
Yeah, by the end, he becomes this virtuoso pianist. He becomes he has that whole Jeopardy thing, and
doesn't he speak other languages too?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, he learns French or something. Yeah. So that had to be a long time that he was reliving the same day.
Yeah.
So how long do you think it was?
Oh gosh. Okay, I'm going to say 2 years.
You think you could become a concert pianist, virtuoso pianist in 2 years?
If you had nothing else to do, I don't know.
Well, you can Google this, because I don't
Google it.
I don't know the answer for sure, because no one knows the answer for sure. But I remember having this conversation. There it is. Thank you. And Tony has it. Harold Ramis, the director, initially suggested it was 10 years, later revised to 30 to 40 years, aligning with longer estimates. The original script made it 10,000 years.
Oh, wow. You can't do that, because then everyone's going to be dead, right?
But this is to master the skills that he had to master. This is what's indicated again in our Google search. They say about 33 years. If you calculate the 10,000 hours thing to master skills, it would be about 33 years.
Of the things we saw.
Of the things we saw, right?
Why doesn't he look so much older then in the movie?
Well, that's part of the
same
that's
day.
part of the thing. Yeah.
Oh, that's part of the Groundhog Day mystique?
He's reliving the same day over and over as this guy who doesn't age or anything. It's really a wild concept.
How was that when Harold Ramis calls you on the phone? He's like, "Hey, Mark Thompson, this is Harold." I mean, how does that happen? How does that
that's a
play
good
out?
question. I don't remember the
You're like, what?
I don't remember the original conversation, but it was something like, can we come spend the day with you? I don't remember if somebody was an intermediary or not.
Probably what did he call the TV station? I wonder. Just tell the station. It's like, hey, I want to hang out with your weather guy.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. I don't think anybody from the station actually.
Interesting.
It might have come through my agent, maybe.
There you go.
I don't know. The concept of Groundhog Day, says Wonder 111, is about multiple dimensions, with the question, if there are multiple versions of a person, then the only thing one needs to do to be the best of multiple possibilities. If the only thing one needs to do is be the best of multiple possibilities. That's interesting. Yeah, multiple dimensions of someone existing in different dimensions, really, really wild.
No, I've seen the movie, Eric. I've seen it more than once. I love that movie.
Yeah.
I didn't. Did they base the weatherman off of you?
Well, they wrote the weatherman part around what they saw with me for the day they were with me. I mean, I think that's fair to say. Yeah. I don't know that they didn't. And I've got an idea. Well, make him like Mark Thompson. I don't think they said that. But it was great to see it, and they did a great job with it, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful concept. So anyway, today's Groundhog Day, and I guess what did you say, Kim? They're saying 6 more weeks of winter or something like that.
Yeah, it's he did see his shadow.
Right.
And it means that the groundhog thinks there will be 6 more weeks of winter, which for most of the country, under the snow, even in weird places like in Florida, they got ice. I saw Wes posted a picture of on the Mark Thompson Show Facebook fan discussion page of ice on his driveway in Florida. It's crazy.
It is wild. It is absolutely wild. Well, there's much to get to. I've got Epstein files. I've got Fulton County and the raid down there, so we'll get into things.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you for being here, everybody. Smash the like button. Upcoming Gary Dietrich. We'll get into a lot with him. I wanted to get to some of the Todd Blanche interviews today. Before I get to any of that, I want to give you a taste of a chunk of Trump, because we have some things that kind of fall into the category of both things you should know about, things you should keep track of, things that are a bit bizarre. But it all, as I say, does fall into the category of a quick visit for a chunk of Trump.
Open wide.
Ready?
Here comes your chunk of Trump.
It's my favorite food.
With your first bite, here's Mark Thompson.
I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful.
I guess Trevor Noah made a joke about Donald Trump at the Grammys.
He did.
Trump didn't like the joke.
And it was almost in passing. I mean, it seemed like it was off the cuff. He said that, let me see what the exact
He says
joke
that
is.
is a Grammy that every artist wants, almost as much as Trump wants Greenland, which makes sense. I mean, because Epstein's island is gone, he needs a new one to hang out on with Bill Clinton.
And the crowd both clapped and went and groaned, and they moved on. But Trump didn't like that.
On Truth Social, Trump said he's never visited Epstein's island, nor anywhere close, and until tonight's false and defamatory statement, have never been accused of being there, not even by the fake news media, end quote. Quote, Noah, a total loser, better get his facts straight and get them straight fast. It looks like I'll be sending my lawyers to sue this poor, pathetic, talentless dope of an MC and suing him for plenty of money. Wow. Well,
That was very inappropriate.
So the threat of a lawsuit from Donald Trump is nothing new. It's also nothing to necessarily ignore, because he likes to sue. And now that he has a Justice Department that will pretty much accede to any demands he has, he can sue. He can have the government sue. He can personally sue. This would be defamation, I guess. And so he would, I guess, sue personally. But anyway, that's the story there. Meanwhile, the other suit he has going is against the IRS.
His lawsuits flying all over the place.
He's suing the IRS for, I believe, was it $10 billion? Was that the number I saw?
Yeah.
And you know, $10 billion for leaking his tax return. It happened in 2018. And his tax return was leaked. And this you will not want to hear me say, but I will say it anyway. People's tax returns should be protected. That's why I became so enraged by the fact that the Doge kids who went in to, get efficiency into government or whatever the guise of their arrival was wrapped in, when they went into the IRS and it looked like they were scraping and did indeed jack a bunch of data out of the IRS, I'm concerned with that. That's your data. That's my data. That's not something that should be out there. And it's out there actually on servers we don't even know and haven't been recorded as, if you will, sort of the chain of custody that would normally be associated with that kind of information. So anyway, so I'm actually on the notion of Trump's tax returns being leaked. I'm kind of on the side of Trump in that they shouldn't be leaked. The idea that you sue the government for $10 billion is, again, this fantastic, ridiculous, over-the-top thing that Trump can do because he owns the government. So when he sues the government, he has to get, just as he sought $230 million for being wrongfully, in his view, the victim of a legal system during the time he was out of office. You'll recall he wanted $230 million. The only people that had to sign off on it were Todd Blanche, Pam Bondi, and him. Here we have he wants $10 billion for the leak of his taxes. And again, the only people who have to approve it are his functionaries and him. It's absurd. But that is his demand.
I understand that this is the first time that a president of the United States has sued the executive branch over which he presides. Not after he's president, because that's happened, when they are out of office, but while he's president. Yeah.
The guy who, took that guy, Chaz Littlejohn is his name. He took the information, downloaded it, leaked it. He's in prison now. And he's in prison for 5 years. And that is a prison term that is far in excess of anything that would typically be associated with that crime. So he's paying dearly with his freedom. But Trump wants more. And so that suit is underway. And Fulton County is suing Donald Trump over the seizure of the 2020 election records. The county commissioner, Marvin Arrington Jr., saying that the county is filing a motion. They're doing that today, challenging the legality of the search and the seizure of the sensitive election records. More on that as we talk to Gary Dietrich. The bizarre appearance of Tulsi Gabbard and all of that. She having been tasked, apparently, with finding problems with the election. Find it. Find that conspiracy. And she's, of course, a big conspiracy theorist already, so she's never really met a conspiracy she doesn't like. Maybe she'll concoct one here. The election is the most reviewed election probably in modern history. So the idea somehow that there were some irregularities, really doesn't seem to conform to any facts. And finally, Donald Trump is closing the Kennedy Center.
What?
I know.
First
he puts his name on it, and then he closes it.
What?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to perform there.
What's happened is the performers who were scheduled to appear at the Kennedy Center are now pulling out of those commitments in droves. Ticket sales and attendance at the Kennedy Center has plummeted. The Kennedy Center is becoming this MAGA institution that no one wants to go near. And rather than owning it and somehow dealing with it, modifying his position, softening his view toward those who are in control, getting some other artists involved on the board, he is head of it all. The idea is, let's just close it. Yeah, we'll close the Kennedy Center. And he doesn't care. So it's closed. Big deal. He's saying, just to run it out, he's saying it's going to be closed for renovations. So he has and they've already been funded, is what he said. Got big plans, big renovations, got to close it. Yeah, that's the way it is. So he's going to cover it in gold, says Quesadilla. I'm sure there will be some gold on display. That is your chunk of Trump.
That's it for this edition.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
But make sure to join us again next time
I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening.
for another chunk of Trump.
Right on. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, the last angry Manny saying in a comment that comes in through the super chat, MT should be in a Groundhog Day 24 series movie.
That would be good.
I was in 24 too. That's a reference to that. That's what that is.
And now, your comments.
Yeah, I was in a lot of episodes of 24. And that was great fun. Well, I moderated a presidential debate in the series 24. That was the very best. Mark, I was very surprised to get an email from Kim over the weekend, says Trevor Starr in Hollywood. Trevor Starr in Hollywood is back.
Yay!
Trevor Starr in Hollywood was MIA.
That's why I sent him an email making sure he's all right.
Oh, no, I did not go back to Concord, which is where he came from. That's in Northern California. That will never happen, he says. I've just been very busy just popping in to say hi. Isn't that nice? Trevor Starr in Hollywood. Wow. It's so nice that Kim reached out to you.
Big shout out.
Yeah, big shout out to Kim and to Trevor Starr in Hollywood. Richard Delamater, the Grammys non-tribute to Bob Weir was so sad. I don't know why he says non-tribute. I guess, anyway, I didn't see it. I'm sure it was sad.
I did. I thought it was respectful and nice.
I don't know if he means sad like it made me sad, or if he thought it was sad meaning it was poor. You know?
Yeah.
Please clarify. Wes in Florida with a super sticker.
Big shout out.
Thank you for the super sticker, Wes. That's really cool.
In icy Florida, right?
Icy Florida. It's cold, baby. It's cold, man. It's cold. Don't forget that Trump is not taking a salary, so he's got to get money somehow, says Mike. Yeah. I don't even believe he's not taking a salary. I don't believe anything. Well, I guess the Trump Kennedy Center is gone, says Luis. Not a shocker, considering this is the dude that bankrupts everything, including casinos. Hashtag loser in chief. Yeah, he will find a way to lose money. But I think in this case, yeah, you and I are paying for all of this. So that's the good news. Other people pick up the tab. So thanks for your comments. Thanks for your super chats, your super stickers, for all good things. I am quickly going to, I'll get to that New York Times report here in a second. Having some Coachella Valley coffee. Kim keeps putting this comment up here, so let me read it. Randy, the New York Times is reporting something. Oh, yeah, I got this. Tulsi Gabbard coordinated a phone call between the Trump and FBI agents after the election center surge. Yeah, the call is unusual. So Trump essentially called the agents with Gabbard. He was on the speaker. He didn't give them supposedly any sorts of directions, but he did and clearly is involved in this effort. I mean, that seems indisputable, right? He's the one who's got an issue with Fulton County, no one else. Maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene should make her performance at the Kennedy Center. Maybe Trump would consider her to take Noam's position, says Chaplain Fred. Thanks for the super chat, Chaplain Fred. I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to be in the Trump orbit anymore. Her most recent comments are associated with the fact that it was all a lie, MAGA's a lie, that the MAGA populism is actually a smokescreen for elitism, and the elites are stealing from us. That is essentially what she said. Some of the verbiage I just gave you is actually the verbiage she used. She called those behind MAGA elites, and she called it all a lie. So I finally placed my first order with Coachella Valley Coffee. Looking forward to trying it. Sandy, you will not regret it. It is the best coffee on earth. I will take another sip just because you mentioned it.
I have the Dragonwell tea today.
Kim is rocking the tea. I'm rocking the coffee in my Peacefully Resist mug, which tastefully has our logo on the backside. You can get that at getmarkmerch.com. You can get Coachella Valley Coffee, all organic, ethically sourced from women-owned farms, at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. When you use the discount code MARKT, you get 10% off the finest coffee you'll ever taste. And there are tasting profiles in every bean. All the coffee beans are hand roasted. This is a boutique roastery. This is not some discount roastery. You will love it. It truly, I was drinking this coffee before they came on the show, and I'm so excited that they're here. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, Mark T at checkout, gets you 10% off. Do it. Feel good about it.
Put that coffee down.
Sunrise Blend is one of my favorites. What a great way to start the day. And again, coffee, tea, spices, 10% off with Mark T at checkout.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Thanks for being here. Mondays bring us the political ninja for iHeart Media. You can hear him across the iHeart Radio network and also across the CBS television stations. He's the brilliant Gary Dietrich. Hello, sir.
Hey, good morning, Mark. And I'm going to continue to plug. I haven't done this for a long time, but you know that Coachella Valley sample stuff that was sent to me, that is tasty.
Yeah, that's how we hook you, Gary. We send you a little bit, you know. No, I think we sent Gary. Didn't we send you a grinder also?
Yeah, well, the thing was, remember that they sent me a couple of bags of beans, and I said, well, you know, I don't have my own grinder thing, so just send me the ground stuff. Well, I accidentally sent the beans, so here comes this next box with some like completely, you know, A-list grinder that I've been using since, and I gotta say, it's doing the job. Now all I need, Mark, did I hear this correctly when I was getting off last week? Do you have a new sponsor that's a bakery? You want to make Gary Dietrich happy. You want to make Gary Dietrich happy on Mondays. You send me a brownie or two, and you'll never regret it.
Gary wants cupcakes.
Gary angling for the bakery. It's Sweet 106 Bakery.
Okay.
And they are amazing. This is a religious experience, their stuff, okay? Now, I'll tell you what. I'll send you some. And everybody else, you'll get sent some if you order it at Sweet. It's SUITE, like a suite of rooms, sweet106bakery.com, and use our discount code MARKT for 15% off. It's all fresh baked, small batches, and they're amazing. And she's amazing. Doesn't she join us tomorrow, I believe? She's on the show. Isn't that right, Kim? Yeah. So you'll meet, the founder is wonderful. So it's just a small business, and they're doing, but she's won Cupcake Wars twice. And so she's,
okay, that's impressive. Cupcake Wars twice.
Yeah, Cupcake Wars twice, and a lot of celebrities, by now, after she's won these things, they are part of her client constellation. It's quite special. So I'll get them for you. No more pitching for free stuff, though, after this. I'm trying
to help you get more sponsors, Mark. That's it. Gary Dietrich's endorsing the coffee and soon to be, I don't know, a cookie or something.
All right.
Anyway.
All right. I'm told. Okay, good stuff. Now, much to talk about. I want to start with the Epstein stuff. Big drop of Epstein stuff. The realities are that one of the complaints has been associated with the fact that there have been no prosecutions. We have a flash poll up on our chat, sort of the issues that are associated with the problems with the Epstein file release. What's the biggest problem with the Epstein file release? Asks our poll. Too much redaction, missing key names, or no accountability. And you can see there's a lot of votes for too much redaction, but no accountability is the big one. Before you speak, I wanted to share with you what Todd Blanche was saying this weekend. Todd Blanche made the kind of rounds of the Sunday shows, and he's asked about the no prosecution aspect of this entire Epstein release. Go ahead, Tony, please.
Well, look, I can't talk about any investigations, but I will say the following, which is that in July, the Department of Justice said that we had reviewed the files, the quote Epstein files, and there was nothing in there that allowed us to prosecute anybody. We then released over 3.5 million pieces of paper, which the entire world can look at now and see if we got it wrong. And so it's not performative, and I respectfully disagree with that statement. We were ordered to do so by Congress and then by the President of the United States, and that's what we did. And let me, I said it on Friday, this Justice Department, the FBI, DHS, we have gone after more sex traffickers, more child pornographers, more men who have done harm to children and young women than any administration in history. And so we need to separate those two ideas, the fact that there's the Epstein files and whether there's anybody there that we can go after, and the work that we are doing every day, which is extraordinary, and we will continue to do that.
I, by the way, don't know that that's true. Like, we've gone after more than any other administration. There's a lot of that out of this administration. We've done more of this than any other administration in history, and most of it is BS. But the reality is that there aren't going to be any prosecutions, I think. It would seem, Gary, even though they've talked about the fact that there's some ongoing investigations. Can you speak to this entire situation?
Well, I'll tell you, Mark, politically, let me just start on that side, and then we'll talk about the policy side in a moment. Politically, this is one of the most remarkable things about this Trump second term, right? Is the equal opportunity outrage on the left and as you know, the far right about this Epstein file deal. First about the release and, questions about the release, as you noted in your poll. Well, is everything really out? And then what is out? Some of it's so heavily redacted, we really can't know, et cetera, et cetera. And then this matter of, well, where are the indictments? Where's the jail time? Where's the anything? And that is continuing to unite far left and far right people over this Epstein file deal. And, it is also pulling in some members of Congress, as Mark, Nancy Mason, others to say, look, people who themselves have been victims of some kind of sexual abuse to say, what gives here? You mean we can't find what, Epstein was convicted, Ghislaine Maxine was convicted, and we can't find any other perpetrators in all of this documentation that deserve to be indicted. And of course, the Clintons are now caught up in some of this, are they going to, respond to the, subpoenas not from the House? But it's just remarkable politically that you've got both sides of the political spectrum still banging away on this issue. But boy, I'll tell you, if you listen to Todd Blanche this weekend, you got to believe right now, there are no plans for people being hauled before the docket. And then on the policy side of it, I'll simply say, it has taken a long time. I mean, that's part of the other issue that people have. Why did it take so long to release these files?
The other thing that we're hearing is from victims who feel as though the redactions didn't cover their names, didn't cover their faces in some instances, that there was a recklessness about this, even as they took so long. I mean, they were 40 days late on the release of just this portion of the files. And there is apparently 50% more still being housed at the Justice Department because of ongoing investigations, et cetera. It's likely we'll never see those, according to Blanche and others. So it's not just a lack of prosecutions. Victims are feeling violated as well. There were a lot of powerful men who were mentioned in all of this, right? I mean, it was the idea is we knew a few of them. They came out in drips and drabs. This put a little more detail on some of that. Play me a little bit of the Lutnick conversation. This is Howard Lutnick. And I'll say this, Lutnick's his Commerce Secretary, but there are a bunch of people involved here, as I say, Gary. The new nominee for the Fed job is mentioned in the Epstein files. I mean, that doesn't mean that they're guilty of these sex crimes, by the way. It's just like you get the stink of Epstein on you because your name is in the files. But here's Lutnick, and he was in a podcast talking about the fact that he and his wife had interactions with their next-door neighbor, Jeffrey Epstein, and then he was so creepy that they never saw him again. And then I'll put the button on that after we hear this.
Ask you about him, East 71st Street. He was your neighbor for 10 years. How well did you know him?
All right. So we are in number 11 and he lives in number 9.
Right.
So we renovate, we buy our house, and our house is pigeons and mice.
Right.
Okay. That's it. It was derelict.
Right.
So we rebuild our house. We move in 2005. Okay. Jeffrey Epstein is arrested in like 08, I think, or something like that.
Right.
So knock on the door. His assistant on like a Saturday says, Mr. Epstein, your neighbor would like to invite you over for coffee. So my wife and I go next door. We walk the 7 steps,
yes,
right, to the next house for coffee. We share a wall,
right.
So it's New York City. So he invites us in. We have coffee in this, and he says, "Do you want a tour?" We said, "Great,
interesting."
He's got a really big house.
Every room you went into.
He's got. Well, I'll tell you. So his house is like super big, really wide, and so he gives me a tour in the living room, big living room. And then across from it is double doors. I assume it's the dining room.
Yeah.
And he opens the doors and there's a massage table in the middle of the room.
Ooh.
And candles all around and stuff. So I ask very insightful, cutting questions. I say to him, massage table in the middle of your house? How often do you have a massage? And he says, every day. And then he like gets like weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, and the right kind of massage.
Ooh.
Now my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, I'm sorry, we have to go.
So that story continues with him saying, here we go, didn't want to have anything to do with him after that.
And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Oh.
And so I look back at it as a gift.
Yes.
He gave me a gift.
Yes.
Of avoid. And so, yeah, that's my story. A one and absolutely done.
Right.
Okay, so let's just now quickly now go to the files. And there are emails that follow that time by quite a bit, where he's trying to arrange a stop on his boat at Epstein Island. Now, he has his family. Let me be clear. He has his wife and kids with him. I mean, I read the email. I might have sent you the screenshot, Tony. I forget. But where Lutnick's trying to arrange to visit Jeffrey Epstein with his family. So I'm, again, struck by the hard line that so many people take on Epstein, everyone from Musk to Trump to Lutnick, et cetera. And then the reality is something starkly different. Speak to whether this will make an impact. Are these two fine in detail for the American public to really respond? Or will, as you suggested, both sides of the political spectrum who are angry about this respond to everything because this is what they're interested in right now?
Yeah, it's hard to know how much longer the Epstein legs go, Mark. I mean, you get the sense that they are beginning to fade a little bit, right? The impact of this, it wasn't the outrage that we saw, say, 6-9 months ago even. So I don't know where this is going to go. What we know is that people, A, aren't satisfied, B, have expectation. And you're right, Mark, it includes the victims too. I mean, there's a whole host, a cast of folks who just say, you're kidding me. There's not one person, not one other person that's going to be convicted in or even brought up on charges on any of this. And then C, as I started out with, it's equal opportunity. I mean, there are people even inside the Democratic Party who are like, we're done with the Clintons. Let's go after them. Let's, as you know, there were some Democratic members of the House that supported that subpoena of the Clintons to come before the House. So I think at this point, it's sort of political loyalties be damned. We want to see something happen. Whether that'll occur or not, it certainly seems like that hope is fading.
I've got to pivot to the election and what's happening in Fulton County. Give me a little bit of Blanche on the election, please, if you will, Tony.
After his arrest.
Okay. You said a lot of things before that, and it's mutual. But let me move on to Georgia. Earlier this week, the FBI went into the elections office in Fulton County, Georgia, to seize 2020 ballots, voter rolls, scanner images. And the president told reporters, quote, they got into the votes. You're going to see some interesting things happening. What interesting things is he talking about, and why was he so involved in an FBI and DOJ raid?
Well, just because he said that doesn't mean that he's involved. I don't believe he was involved. This is a criminal grand jury investigation, and I can't comment on it beyond what you just said, which is that there was a search warrant that was authorized by a federal judge, by a magistrate judge in Atlanta, that allowed us to go and seize those records, and they have been seized by the FBI as part of an ongoing criminal investigation.
He said interesting things are happening, so it sounds like he was briefed on it.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not around when the president's briefed or not briefed. What I've said is that this is a criminal investigation, so it's a tightly held, as it must be under the law. It's a grand jury investigation, and that's how we're proceeding.
What are they investigating?
as you know, we can't talk about specifics of any grand jury investigation. I will tell you, as I said on Friday, as the president has said, election integrity is of the highest importance to the American people, hopefully to everybody in this country, Democrats and Republicans alike. And so we are doing everything we can to make sure that we have free and fair elections.
Okay. And as you well know, that when it comes to Georgia, claims of voter fraud there, because they got the 2020 ballots, have been debunked over and over again. There were multiple recounts. Why was the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, present at an FBI raid?
First of all, it wasn't an FBI raid. It was a search warrant being executed by FBI agents in the middle of the day.
Well, why was she there?
And secondly, I don't know why the director was there. She is not part of the grand jury investigation, but she is for sure a key part of our efforts at election integrity and making sure that we have free and fair elections. She's an expert in that space, and it's a big part of what she and her team look at every day. But beyond that, I don't, like I said before, this is a grand jury investigation being conducted by a U.S. attorney, and that's where we have to leave it for now.
Okay, so I wanted you to hear that. And the last thing I'll say, just as a coda, is that New York Times reporting indicates that Trump spoke to FBI agents who were involved in that seizure after the seizure, and Tulsi Gabbard organized that call. He was on the speaker. Apparently, Tulsi was, as I say, kind of leading the call, and he didn't provide any directives, according to reporting, but that he is clearly connected with this because he spoke to the nation via his social media and then to the FBI agents, as I say, after the raid. Give me some thoughts on this.
Well, a couple things. First off, boy, you watch how awkward those various bites were from Todd Blanche. That guy drew the short straw for the weekend Sunday talk shows. I don't think I've seen anybody, have more trouble getting through those various topics than he did, man. I mean, and part of the problem is he's legally right. He can't even talk about them, actually, and Dana Bash just kept letting him have it. But whether it be that or the one on Epstein files, man, poor Todd Blanche, this guy had a bad weekend. All right. Now, as far as the 2020 election integrity thing goes, Mark, it's not even 24. We're now talking 5 years ago, right? We're digging back into this stuff. I got to tell you, the appetite, certainly even within the GOP in Congress, there is almost zero appetite to dig this stuff up again. Is this a personal vendetta kind of concept for Trump? It sure seems to continue that way. Tulsi Gabbard, who knows what that was about? I mean, Russia collusion, I don't know where that's going. But here's the problem. 5 years later, whatever they find, whatever comes out of this investigation of these things, people are going to say, look, who knows that you got everything or didn't selectively pull some of it out? I just think it's a fool's errand, honestly, at this point. And frankly, is anything going to really come out of this that's going to be substantive? I hate to say it, but I doubt it.
Well, it's a fool's errand without question, and it's a waste of taxpayer money. It's a waste of FBI agents. You've taken supposedly 20% of the FBI which was dedicated to things that they brag about, like investigating child pornography and human trafficking and drug trafficking. These guys are now doing immigration stuff. So, I mean, there's been a reorganization of government, and part of the government has been directed toward this, as you suggested, fool's errand. It may be a fool's errand from a true political standpoint, but clearly Trump is embracing this notion that there was some kind of steal going on in 2020. But I think the key point is that was relitigated over and over and over again. This really was the most looked at election, even as they call it the most corrupt election. I mean, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, was on This Week, the other Sunday show. You talk about the short straw. He seems, he's unflappable. He's amazing to me. And he says, well, it's clearly one of the most questioned elections in history. And he makes all these statements. I'm thinking, no, it wasn't. It was one of the most reviewed elections in history. And it seems as though there was legitimacy about the 2020 election that I don't know is reflected in our most recent election even.
Yeah. From a purely political point of view, where we are right now at this point in time, we're 10 months out from critical midterms. Is this an attempt to fire up the the old Trump base. I don't know. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. At this point, we don't have any evidence it's going to go anywhere, certainly in time to have any positive impact from their perspective on ginning up the base. I don't really, it seems oddly placed to me, given all the other issues that are animating the populace. I'll put it that way.
That's fair. Now, because you mentioned the midterms, let me ask you about this. A Republican losing by 14 points in a safe conservative Texas state Senate race. Trump carried by 17 points that district in 2024. There is a voter backlash against the Trump administration. I think you can see it in that kind of result, right? So the Democrat is a labor union leader and veteran, easily defeating the Republican there, who had Trump's endorsement, Gary, on his Truth Social. Can you speak to that? And is it the bellwether I think it is, or is it an outlier?
I think it's probably some of both, Mark. It seems to be kind of a mixed bag. Here's the deal. Trump did not get involved in this election early. It was late that they wanted him involved much earlier, but he got involved late and then had his Truth Social post, which didn't apparently carry a lot of weight in animating his folks. The DNC, however, has been very smartly strategic, and a lot of these midterm election. Well, they're not even midterm elections, right? They're just, this is a replacement seat.
Yeah, special elections, really, I guess.
And the DNC has been very strategic in putting a lot of resources to basically build momentum, anti-Trump momentum around the country. I think it's very politically smart because they're getting a lot of headlines for this. Who would have paid any attention to a Texas state Senate seat, right? Except that it was a big flip, as you rightly point out, from a very pro-Trump area to this, person losing this, the Republicans losing this seat. So it's smart politically. Does it have any real impact in terms of the midterms? We'll see. But it's momentum building for the DNC and the Democrats. And again, I think with so little levers they have to pull in Washington to really go after Trump, going out in the hinterlands and winning these kinds of elections, certainly bolsters their base as well as their donor base.
That's interesting. That makes that's why you're so wonderful. You do, point out aspects to this that feed the big machine, and I didn't even consider that. Just in my last couple of minutes, the ICE raids in Minnesota, the detaining of those who are involved in or perceived to be involved in getting in their way, they continue. There was this incident. I'll show you this quickly. This is a video of a woman she was trailed by, I guess they're ICE agents. You can't tell if they're ICE agents, if there's, everybody's wearing a mask and they have different markings, but they jump out of their vehicle with guns drawn against this woman. Go ahead, just show everybody a little bit of it, and then I want to ask you about it. She's trying to run from them.
I think someone needs to call 911. They are seriously attacking me.
We'll call 911 right now.
Yep.
What's your location?
Call 911. I'm right at the corner of Jefferson.
And here they go. They got guns drawn.
Nope.
Get out of the car right
now. No, I will not.
I
will not get out of the car. No. No. I will not get out of the car. You guys, I need CEOs here now.
Get out of the car.
No, I will not get out of the car. You can't do this. Get your hands off of me. Get your fucking hands off me. Get your hands off me.
I give this lady credit, man. I don't know. You got 4 guys with guns trained on you. All right, so that's the situation. That's enough. Eventually, she is taken in. And then Minnesota cops intercede, and she's released. Just give me a sense of this. This is, kind of an escalation of what are initial interactions with these guys on the ground.
Well, Mark, I think the key thing to me is more and more we're seeing these kinds of videos, right? So in other words, with all the cell phones, recording seemingly almost every ICE interaction with people, now with body cams being asked for, and sometimes some of that footage released from ICE. It's the problem is in the modern age, right? Perception becomes reality. Whatever ICE says about this, right? These kinds of interactions don't look good. And that was what I think Tom Homan was attempting to try to do last week, was like, look, we got to tamp this thing down because this is not going in a good direction. And even a lot of people inside the White House are telling Trump the same thing. Look, this is not going to be good visuals. You know this, Mark. I mean, in the entertainment industry, I mean, a lot of times it's the visuals. Even just a 10-second clip carries a lot of power and a lot of
Well,
weight.
Trump is very much concerned. I think that's his primary concern with everything is the way it's playing and the way it plays.
Right. So I think it's, you know, this is not a good look. Holman says he's going to reduce the presence in Minnesota. We'll see.
And lastly, I want to ask you about corruption. I think this is clearly the most corrupt administration in history, but I'll just start, and these are my words, not yours. But this president, his latest attempt at a money grab, he had the $230 million, as you know, because he felt aggrieved by a legal system that pursued him during the years he was not president. Now he's president again, and he wanted that $230 million, and all who had to sign off on it were his appointed Justice Department functionaries, and then himself. Now he wants $10 billion for the leak of his tax return in 2018. I wonder if you could speak to this.
Well, and he apparently wants to sue Trevor Noah over a joke made at the
Grammys, yeah.
Whatever. I mean, I don't know. This seems to have no end. $10 billion, you know. I think most people view this more than anything now as intimidation or attempts at intimidation, Mark, more than anything else. Where this stuff's going to end up, and, you know, is he going to get anywhere close to $10 billion? I think probably the short answer to that is no.
So if it's a negotiation, he gets $2 billion from the taxpayers?
Well, I'll be shocked if that even happens. Let's see where it all plays out.
Okay. All right. I'm maybe on down the way we can take side bets on what side action on where that might end up. Thank you. I think we got to everything, at least everything we've got time for. I so appreciate you on Mondays, Gary. You're so generous with your time, and you do help frame things in a way that I think oftentimes can be lost in everything. So appreciate you here, man. And we'll get you some baked goods, I promise.
Okay, buddy. Enjoy the cookies and coffee and have a great show.
You'll get some Sweet 106. See you. Gary Dietrich, everybody. And Gary Dietrich, of course, is brought to us each week by Bill Campbell. Bill Campbell's at Remax Gold. We have a lot of listeners and viewers in San Francisco and the surrounding San Francisco Bay Area in Northern California. And if you're relocating into or from Northern California, you need a highly respected real estate professional, and Bill Campbell is your guy. Remax Gold is where he is. You can call or text him, 530-448-7474, 530-448-7474. We appreciate him bringing us Gary's segment every week. He's Bill Campbell, Remax Gold.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I want to check the poll quickly if I can, Tony. Can I just, our flash poll today.
It's a Mark Thompson Show flash
what's
poll.
The biggest problem with the Epstein file release is the question. Too much redaction, 36% say that, missing key names, or no accountability. No accountability is, of course, where everybody lands, it would seem, for the most part, 56%. You can vote in the chat. I don't need to say this, but I will. This is not a scientific poll. But nonetheless, it kind of, takes the temperature of the water. And I think it really does reflect where most of us are on this, which is, wow, a lot of stuff that even, Sarah Kendzior has talked about for years, is borne out in what we're seeing with the Epstein file release. And yet, similarly, the elites cover their ass. There's no accountability. So there's some reputational harm, but there's no legal accountability.
I was reading a story that Trump claims this latest dump of all of the Epstein files, of many of the Epstein files, absolves him of any wrongdoing.
Well, he does that. That's exactly what Bill Barr did with the Mueller report. Get out in front of it. Look, nothing there. You'll see once we release it. No collusion, no wrongdoing. He just made the statement when the Mueller report was filled with collusion and wrongdoing.
Don't we know that they hired people to pick through and pluck his name out? I mean, it would seem so.
Well, even with the dry cleaning of the files that they did, there's a lot damning in there. But I'll get to Sarah next, and we'll talk about that. Give me 1 minute just to show some love for the wonderful people at Suite 106. They are our newest...
The Mark Thompson Show.
Our newest sponsor, Suite 106. It's a partnership we have with them, and we're really excited that they would jump on board. They are... Suite 106 Bakery is a small business, again, run by women who are gifted in this world of baking. She bakes in small batches, and she bakes to order. So when you order something from her, they bake it for you, and they get it out to you promptly. It's a remarkable concept, and the stuff is so delicious. And I'll just say one other thing about, first of all, you'll meet her tomorrow. She's going to be on the show. But she won Cupcake Wars twice. The second time she's playing against, or, it's a bake-off against other champions, 50 other champions, something like that.
You can tell exactly why she won.
Yeah.
One forkful, and it's like, oh yeah, she won. She won big time. Mm-hmm.
So grab a Valentine's Day bundle, and if you do it by, I think if you get it done by February 9th, they'll get it out for you by Valentine's Day.
Sure.
Suite 106, SUITE. What is it? February what?
7.
February 7th. I'm sorry. February 7th. There she is. She's just so lovely. And as I say, her origin story is wonderful. Suite106bakery.com, SUITE, Suite106bakery.com. Use our discount code. You'll get 15% off anything you order from there. Suite 106 Bakery. Mark T is the discount code you'll need. Mark T at checkout for 15% off. Suite 106 Bakery.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Mondays bring the gift of someone who has written extensively about the Epstein saga, about the Trump interaction with Epstein, about the elites who all interlock internationally with Epstein and beyond. She's a brilliant, best-selling author and investigative journalist. She's the wonderful Sarah Kendzior, everybody. Wow. You have to be busy with all of this Epstein stuff. I feel like it verifies so much of what you've spoken of. I mean, in a way, it just it repeats a lot of what you have spoken of through the years in your writing.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I've looked through a lot of the files. A lot of them are basically the primary source documents for events that I describe in my book, Hiding in Plain Sight. And also they knew, I'll describe a party which multiple pedophiles or pedophile enablers among this criminal elite attended. And I'll see the emails, asking for their attendance in those records. What this shows is just how long this has been known by people in the highest ranks of power. I knew about it as, a nobody from Missouri, putting this together with a laptop in 2015. I spoke about it publicly then, warned about it in regard to, Trump in particular, but also others. Many other people found this because Epstein had already been indicted. The information was largely in the public domain. The victims had come forward. So this just, is more confirmation, and I think adds another level of detail as to the sadism, the depravity, and the evil of this operation beyond just the pedophile trafficking, but things like eugenics, human experimentation, all sorts of plans that they had in mind. So yeah, just, confirmed a lot of my worst.
It's funny you mentioned eugenics. I kind of forgot about it, even though I did read it in the files over the weekend. The files, you get on the Justice Department thing and you go through it, the search can be a little clunky. I mean, by now you're probably good at it, but for me it was a little difficult, and you end up reading chunks here and there, and eugenics was part of it. It was a bizarre subculture that they created.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that was actually weird for me with the search engine on this is that I realized it's the first time in maybe a year and a half that I've used a search engine that didn't spit out an AI summary. And I usually try to make sure that they don't do that in advance, but they often just kind of override what I've entered. So I was like, it was bringing me back to the days where we had an actual public domain online full of all of these records and documents that anybody could go through, dig through, and put the pieces together. So, it's kind of a throwback in that respect. That said, it's decontextualized. There, as I guess your listeners have already pointed out, many of the names of the predators are redacted. The people he's writing to are. A lot of things are out of context and undated. It's hard to put it together, but yeah, I mean, this was never purely a rape child trafficking operation. That would be bad enough in itself, but it was always more than that. Ghislaine Maxwell's presence in this organization always made that clear. Her father, Robert Maxwell, was a spy, or at least an espionage operative for Israel, given a very elaborate state funeral for his efforts, deeply entwined with the Russian mafia. One thing I thought was interesting was just the number of officials from the last few administrations who had relatives or were themselves in all of these documents. Blinken's father, for example, was Epstein's lawyer. He was Robert Maxwell's lawyer before that. There's financial records in the documents showing that. His sister, it was a close friend, or I guess half sister. It's his stepfather, by the way, not his father, Samuel Pissar. His half sister is in there talking to Ghislaine Maxwell about all sorts of things. In the Trump administration, you have Howard Lutnick, you have Wilbur Ross, you have Bill Barr, you have this very long list of people. So, really, what are the odds that so many people very close through family ties or personal ties or business ties to Jeffrey Epstein appear in every administration over and over and over again, along with the groups that are working behind the scenes? A lot of the groups that worked, for example, to orchestrate Trump's pardons in his first term, like the Aleph Institute, were in close contact with Epstein. Dershowitz, the impeachment lawyer for Trump, but also somebody deeply embedded in both parties, one of Epstein's closest correspondents. And, it just goes on. And, again, the haunting thing, like the reason my books are called Hiding in Plain Sight, and they knew, is what bothered me was the amount of people who knew this and did nothing when it was children's lives on the line, when it was this soul destroying culture that they felt perfectly fine to let go on. And now we're just seeing the broader manifestations of it in things like AI, eugenics, the destruction of the environment, autocracy, right-wing fanatics, white supremacist movements. All of that is seen in those emails too. And the rape and trafficking operation was really for them more of a blackmail and espionage maneuver. They don't consider these girls to be human beings. They never did. And it just it opens a door further that people refused to look through for a long time. And I think they're still refusing. And that's what bothers me so much. They're watching, but they're not seeing.
The volume of material is immense, but the volume level of the outrage on both sides is really what yielded to this great volume of material being released. But then when you get the president's number 2 guy at the Justice Department, play a little bit of Blanche on the Sunday show with Stephanopoulos, the This Week show, yeah, and he's asked about it. Here's how he handles it. Go ahead.
Joined now by the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche. Mr. Blanche, thank you for joining us this morning. As you know, your release on Friday has already received a response from the victims, from Jeffrey Epstein's victims. I want to show the statement right now. It says, survivors are having their names and identifying information exposed while the men who abuse us remain hidden and protected. This is outrageous. The Justice Department cannot claim it is finishing releasing files until every legally required document is released and every abuser and enabler is fully exposed. Will there be more releases?
I mean, look, first of all, we took great pains, as I explained on Friday, to make sure that we protected victims. We are talking about a review of 3.5 million pieces of paper that were released on Friday. Every time we hear from a victim or their lawyer that they believe that their name was not properly redacted, we immediately rectify that. And the numbers we're talking about, just so the American people understand, we're talking about 0.001% of all the materials. And we knew this. I said this on Friday, that of course the nature of this type of review was the volume of materials that were reviewed, that there would be times when this happened. And so we're working hard to make sure that we fix that. And I expect that will continue.
So, Blanche is does the two-step this weekend. It's Bondi some weekends, it's Blanche other weekends. They were reckless for a crew that took so long to get this stuff out. We had the files dry cleaned in the way they were. So many redactions, so many people protected. And then there's a chaos, it would seem, or is it deliberate, that there were victims' names and identifying characteristics that were released in all of this?
I think to some degree it's deliberate. I think that part of this is to torment those victims, discourage further, other victims of this operation, which I'm wondering who is running it right now, from coming forward, from giving details. They want to give them a message. This is what happens to you if you come forward. There were some emails that didn't have the name, but I read enough about the cases to know who was speaking in the document. So they're not taking real pains to cover this up, but they are taking pains to cover up the predators and to not put any kind of synthesis together about why this operation even existed, why it was allowed to go on, again, why so many people linked to it are in positions of power through multiple administrations. That, of course, would be an act of self-incrimination, because one of the most named people is Trump, has always been Trump. Like days before the 2016 election, an Epstein victim was going to hold a press conference detailing the fact that she claims she was raped by Trump after being procured from Mar-a-Lago when she was 13 years old. She was threatened with death, so was her lawyer, and they canceled that press conference. And, there are times when I think, what if that had gone forward? Like, would we be in another reality where he wouldn't have won and a lot of things would have gone in a different direction? But then I think about that, that information, that document, a lot of people think it's a new thing that was released through these files. It's not. It's very old. It's an old court case. And it didn't change anything in terms of his ability to grab power, maintain power, and not be punished or contained in any kind of meaningful way. Even when he was branded a felon, during the Biden years, they didn't go after him for this or any other, severe crime, sedition, obstruction of justice. Abuse of the pardon power, things that would have real ramifications, for his second term, and also remind people what it is he had done. They avoided all of that. This truly is one of these moments where they're all in on it together, but what they're in on is it's so revolting and so sickening. And I do think it's from public pressure that they released some of these documents. But you have to notice at the same time, the same group of people is taking over the media. They're buying TikTok and controlling that and making sure you can't search for Epstein. Musk bought Twitter, made it useless as a search engine, caused people to not just quit using it, but delete their own accounts, which held records of their own observations of the criminality of the Trump administration and of just criminality in general. They've done it to Google and Google search. They're doing it to CBS. They're doing it to basically every avenue. So what they're basically doing is creating a situation where we will have more information at our fingertips than before, but we will not be allowed to talk about it. They want to codify this into law. They want to pass these extreme, regulations on freedom of speech, free assembly. We've seen them doing that. So what good will it do us to have this? What good will it do for the victims, which is who we should be thinking about, but also how will we be able to talk to each other and get a an idea of what this means for our country's future, our understanding of national security, of the events of the last 20 or 30 years, if we are prohibited from discussing it, or if our own thoughts don't even appear to others, if they're shadow banned, if not officially banned.
Yeah, you write about this. I mean, this is the authoritarian playbook and the rise of autocracy that you write about. And you talk about the fact that essentially you begin to be reduced to sort of benign posts on your social media. Otherwise, you'll endure the wrath of government.
Yeah, I mean, people already are self-censoring. They've been doing that because of threats for a long time. In this case, I always have thought of Epstein as an issue that unites people. I mean, in the worst possible way, because you don't want this to be happening. But, across the board, it doesn't matter your political affiliation. People have spoken out wanting the answers about Epstein and Maxwell. They've condemned Epstein and Maxwell from a moral level. They want to know who's involved. They finally reveal more. I still think it's a fraction of what's out there, because this has been going on, since at least the 80s, probably before, when you go through Robert Maxwell and his group. But I think our ability to talk about it is what is at stake. It's not just the self-censorship. It's people typing in a revelation or a link to a document, with the word Epstein, and an algorithm knowing and recognizing that word and blocking it out, or people turning to Grok or ChatGPT or these other these bots that will give you an answer that is often incorrect. I'm watching people ask them about what's in the Epstein documents, and these mechanical hallucinations are lying. They're giving false information, which is then repeated, which is then retweeted and memed and so forth. And so you end up with even more confusion than before. And that's a great way to bury a story that is this big. They know they can't bury something at this level, so they're making it as difficult as possible to get to the bottom of it and find out the truth. And they're making sure that people who are involved in the operation, people like Musk, who visited Epstein's island, are the people who own the media and social media infrastructure through which the story is told.
Yeah. I'm seeing just in some of the comments that are up that Epstein was just the facilitator, that it was part of a much bigger network. And that's what Sarah writes about. I mean, it's it was a massive international human trafficking network, and also money. I mean, the following the money is a key part of this as well.
Yeah, and on that note, I feel like that aspect has been played down. Though again, what I see, I don't know whether it's what you see or other people see, because all of these social media and media apparatus limit what I'm able to see. But for example, Les Wexner, Epstein's one client, his long-term financial partner, I haven't seen him mentioned very much. I haven't seen much of a financial trail being mentioned with specifics regarding people like Peter Thiel. I always think about the fact that it was the day after the Thiel-Epstein financial connection was established in the New York Times that the Trump administration announced abruptly that the Epstein case is going to be closed, which in turn led to this public outcry, which then led to this little drip, drip, drip of, we'll release some documents here and there. But ultimately, I think to kind of acclimatize people to the fact that we will learn horrific revelations, and I think anyone with a conscience is going to be revolted by this. I think they're hoping people tune out, and I think it's also just it's corrosive on the soul. If you care about other people, if you care about children, you're going to have an innate human reaction to this. It's hard to bear over a period of time, and I think that is what they want, because they want that combined with no accountability. You're not seeing like Alan Dershowitz under indictment, or other people who are still alive and who we know are involved in this in some capacity. We're not seeing any action in that direction. We're not seeing any moves from Congress in that direction. They ask for the files like they're this like magic wand that you wave and then the whole thing sort of goes away and everyone is satisfied. That's not what people want. People want justice. They want this to never happen again. They want the perpetrators to be contained, and they want to know, what happened to this operation, who took it over from Epstein, because it's very doubtful that something like this would just magically disappear. And so there's a lot of loose ends to follow, and very few outlets that are not paywalled, that have resources for investigative reporting and reporters able to do the job, that exist for this to be told. And honestly, I get the feeling like they don't care if we know at this point. There's some things I think they don't want us to know about, things that are even worse than are in there, but they haven't gotten to those yet, and I'm not sure they ever will.
I think you make such a great point about the fact that we said release the Epstein files, and there's a sense that, like, at the end of the movie, the files are released, like it's the end of Shawshank Redemption, where everything just comes in. He's revealed as a corrupt warden or whatever. The cops are coming up, and he takes his own life, and everybody's free, and our protagonist is on a beach somewhere with Morgan Freeman. I mean, there is this sense that daylight, if you will somehow cure this. But you've just made a really important point, which is, if nothing happens, if there are no consequences as a result of this, and clearly there are no consequences because they've been sitting with these documents and sitting with these investigations, even the Acosta investigation in Florida, Sarah, just on those charges alone, there should be many more repercussions than we saw. I think that speaks volumes for where we are, which is, it doesn't matter if people know. It's just the power grab continues, and there'll be no accountability.
I mean, I think it matters in its own right. I think the truth matters in its own right. It matters to the victims who are constantly portrayed as liars or opportunists. It matters that people know this happens. I think it also matters in terms of understanding the relationship of our country and its government to those of Israel, Russia, other countries that are involved in this multinational operation. I think that that's important. But what it really needs to be studied is that this is a political culture. This is a political culture of a criminal elite that practices pedophilia, rape, torture, kidnapping, is very cavalier about it, very casual in their own emails. They didn't seem to have any worry that these would be released, that they would face consequences, that they would be caught. How did that kind of establishment become formed? Because it's not that long ago that someone saying something just offensive on a campaign trail would be enough to end their campaign. Like I remember in Missouri when Todd Akin was running against Claire McCaskill in 2012, not really that long ago, and said, if a woman is raped, it's there's legitimate rape and illegitimate rape, and the baby will just automatically not be born if it's legitimate. He had some kind of very inflammatory comment, and it destroyed his campaign, and that's why McCaskill won. That would be like a 2-minute news segment now, because of the cavalcade of horrific things uttered by Trump and people in his fold, and all of these other people, or the things we see in the Epstein files. We now have a completely different political culture that I think most people, regardless of their political party, find disgusting. But this class of plutocrats and billionaires finds to be normal. And they clearly have a hierarchy. They have an ethnic hierarchy, a racial hierarchy, a class hierarchy within this. And, this should be studied like through social science. But I've been watching people run away from this story for 10 years. I've faced threats for the story, as I've told it, and ostracization and all of these things. Now they have no choice but to confront it. So I'm hoping that whatever skills people have to shed some light on some of these issues, some of these individuals, they do not shy away from it now, because it's long overdue.
I just think that the repercussions from it, the legal repercussions, sadly may not follow. But as you say, there's value in its release. But the sad expectation, I think, of there being justice, I think that, sadly, I just don't know that we're going to see. I think we're not going to see the kind of resolution that we'd like. Maybe I'll put it that way. I want to ask you about corruption, because I think it's a big part of this administration, and Donald Trump is so openly corrupt. It's wild. You can almost just throw a rock at any sort of in any direction in the White House, and you'll hit corruption. The $230 million shakedown as a result of his grievances about the legal system going after him during his 4 years. I mean, that some of those cases are still not resolved. The documents case, never really saw the light of day. I thought that would have really been so very damning, and that might have really done him in because there were real military secrets and all of that. But now, so that was a $230 million shakedown. We know about the $1 billion per country for the the peace council that he's put together. This is that he'll control all that money. We know about the money from Venezuelan interdiction of the oil ship going to Qatar, that money to a bank account controlled by Trump and the Trump administration. Again, and you can, come after me about, well, he doesn't really control that money. It's not going into his pocket. Well, the $230 million goes in his pocket and the $1 billion he has control of, and he makes a part of that. And now it's a $10 billion lawsuit that he's launched against the IRS, his IRS. So again, those who will preside over this and the disposition of this demand are his functionaries, Todd Blanche, Pam Bondi, and then he has to sign off on it as president. It's a $10 billion taxpayer-funded money grab.
Yeah, I mean, this is what he did in the first term on a smaller level. And it's also what he did as a private citizen, excessive litigation, bribes, threats. He is a mafioso and this is a mafia presidency. And this is how he has always operated. And, I've always thought the more interesting question is, why was he not contained? In 2016, everyone knew that this is what he was about. It was covered in the press. It wasn't a secret. They somehow thought he wouldn't do it as president. Whereas being the president is a wonderful opportunity to get yourself out of all sorts of, situations that were bad, like IRS investigations, and there were investigations against him from the DOJ, from the Department of the Treasury, from the IRS. And so, of course, what he's going to do is investigate the investigators. He's going to replace them with lackeys. That's what he did during his first term. In his second term, he's coming in and profiting. And I do think it's interesting, though, to ask about the money. It is going into his pocket, as you say, but his pockets are not long for this mortal coil. You know what I mean? Like he's pushing 80. Someone else is going to inherit all of this. And I'm curious who this is. Just as Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell inherited Robert Maxwell's operation, there will be successors. There's been difficulty appointing one. I'd like to know where that money will end up. But what I see among the people who should be holding him accountable, they're acting like it's the end of the world. And I mean in a literal sense. They're kind of acting like it doesn't matter what they do because this whole order is going to be destroyed somehow. And so why bother with any of it? Which is not quite the way they acted in the first term. I thought they did a really crappy job, but it wasn't with this kind of fatalism. And so I worry that there's something worse even than what we've already discussed at play. For example, a war in Iran, a war of extreme violence. I'm worried that things like that are coming our way. And that's why there's so little effort made to track this money or to stop this corruption or to fight back. I mean, the IRS could wield enormous power against him simply by revealing a lot of these tax documents, which, the Czech Secret Services had them. I reprinted some of those revelations in my books. Other people had them. They've been quiet the whole time. They're probably scared, but, a lot of people could come forward about Trump and, a lot of the worst things about him, which people still don't know, and try to put an end to all of this. And they don't, and they haven't. And the question of why is one that really gnaws at me, because if you could stop this, if you could end all this pain and suffering, why wouldn't you? But over and over, they choose not to speak out.
I think people are scared. I mean, I think that he's cowed an entire party. I mean, they're scared of political violence against their person, to state it pointedly. They're scared of their family being harmed and themselves being harmed. And in the case of the IRS, the one guy who was responsible for leaking the 2018 the tax documents, which showed that Trump paid no taxes at all, essentially, he's doing 5 years in prison, and that's hard time. And he's, as you know, doing time that is far in excess of what the average kind of disposition of that sort of case would demand. In other words, you'd normally get even less than a year for the kind of violation and leakage of that information. So I think people are scared, Sarah. I think that's our problem. People, they have sufficiently cowed all those who might bring the dog to heel, you know?
Yeah, and that's been true for a while because of these threats of violence, because of people like Roger Stone, who as early as 2016 were saying, if Trump is not made president, there's going to be a bloodbath. That's his term. They weren't subtle about any of this, and there were a lot of deaths, that followed that were never really followed up on. The death of Vitaly Churkin, for example, the UN ambassador to Russia, had met with Trump and turned out to be an Epstein associate. That wasn't revealed until 2023. He died mysteriously in 2017. There was the death of GOP operative Peter Smith, who died with a strange note, and of course, the death of Epstein. You get a lot of extremely strange suicides, murders, falling out of windows, disappearances. People are frightened for good reason. What pains me is that the best way of fighting back would have been early, when I think people did see this clearly. We had better access to, social media, to regular media. We didn't have quite as much surveillance, in terms of the government being able to, access our phones, access everything. And, they had not yet purged everybody and packed all of the courts, including the Supreme Court. So there was just a better chance of winning back then had people been honest. But they did not want to confront the institutional complicity that made his rise possible. I mean, I would say I certainly sympathize with everyone in a situation, of being threatened with physical violence, because I've also been in this situation for over a decade. But we're going to lose more if folks don't speak out in a way that they can, and maybe think creatively about a way to do that while still keeping themselves and their loved ones safe.
I sure think that en masse political leadership can stem this tide. I'm talking about GOP political leadership. I get it that you guys are scared, but you talk about him behind his back. You do everything from deride him in comic ways to talk about how dark a time it is in America, and now he is this horrible, malevolent force. These are GOP representatives and senators who talk that way. If they could put together the coalition necessary, it doesn't take a lot to actually, impeach him and remove him, or otherwise, as I say, stem this tide of corruption and chaotic policy. I mean, everything. The tariff policy is insane, and he wields it like a wizard in a Harry Potter book. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the network behind him is more powerful, and the network of mafiosos, plutocrats, Silicon Valley people is something I worry about more than Trump, the individual. But there are certain things, that Trump has wanted to do for a long time. The tariffs, for example, he talked about that kind of policy all the way back in the 1980s. Now he has the ability to actually enact it, often against people in his own party's will. Another thing he's been talking about since the 1980s is using nuclear weapons, and he, unilaterally is the individual who could do that. There are plenty of practical reasons to remove him from office. I don't think he'll necessarily be replaced with somebody much better. And I really want to emphasize that this broad transnational criminal network is the key problem, and that needs to be gutted out. But certainly Trump's removal would take away some problems. I think a sort of chaotic potential use of nuclear weapons, the tariff obsession, the general kind of sociopathic method of running a country, his own peculiar kind of personality, and the cult surrounding him. I think the MAGA cult will not transfer onto another individual. Those could go away, and the Republicans do have that power, but the damage from this will go on a long time. And I just hope they think about what they're giving up, what they're giving up for their children's future, their grandchildren's future, the world we're going to inherit. I'm assuming some of them have the same apocalyptic kind of attitude as those in Trump's fold, whether it is, a belief in transhumanism and AI replacing human beings, or a more traditional messianic kind of apocalyptic belief, which you also saw in the Reagan era and in other administrations. They're all incredibly dangerous when you have people who actually have military power and can carry these kind of plans to fruition. But for those who don't share that, who actually envision a world ahead, a better world, the time to act is now. It's it's late, but really better late than never, because
Sure.
never is the literal option that besides it.
The last thing I'll share with you is something that's just breaking news. Apparently, Donald Trump is suggesting nationalizing the vote. President Donald Trump calling into Dan Bongino's podcast. Dan Bongino, bounced from the FBI to now back to his podcast world. And Trump called in and says that states are failing at overseeing their own elections and accusing the states where he's repeatedly lost of voter fraud. The quote he had is, quote, amazing that Republicans aren't tougher on this. The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least many 15 places, he says. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting. We have states that are so crooked and they're counting votes. So
That's interesting. The 15 specific number is interesting. One thing though is, as I've said before, you can't vote out the mafia. And I think sometimes their emphasis on elections is to give this illusion that this particular power is much more in our hands and is much more our fault as ordinary people than it actually is. Whereas we really have a system that is run by, plutocrats, by donors, and by, gerrymandering and old ways of divvying up, land and population so that certain people can't win. Although we recently saw an unexpected win in Texas, perhaps that was what prompted it. I mean, honestly, it's hard for me to believe that Trump wrote this individually, that he particularly cares about this, because I think the only election he really cares about is his own. I don't think he cares about what happens to the Republican Party. So I'm guessing some kind of Republican operative was like, hey, put out something about this, and God only knows why. I don't think it's what he's really.
Yeah, you're right. It would be. It's odd that he would be in any way obsessing on this, since you're right. Technically, he's kind of out of the game anyway. But he did call in apparently at Bongino's show with that agenda item that he wanted to get out. So, meanwhile, Fulton County and all of that goes down, and I will table the rest that I have for you. I could talk to you for hours, but there'll be links to all of Sarah's books. Do yourself a favor, pick up Any and All They Knew, Hiding in Plain Sight. Those are just two of them. And I recommend her Substack. So there'll be a link to the Substack as well. Sarah, of course, her most recent one is The Last American Road Trip, which is just a wonderful book and filled with history and specific moments. It's a real treat, man. You've got to do yourself a favor, The Last American Road Trip. All right, Sarah, I'm fanboyed out for the day. I'll talk to you next week, and thank you for joining us.
Epsteined out, so thank you.
Okay, all right. Sarah Kendzior, everybody. Bye-bye, Sarah. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at? Stay at home and get baked.
Right on, everyone. Great to have you here. I will remind you, we have a new, yes, thank you, Sarah. That's the way I feel. Sarah is a treasure, says Donna. For real, man. For reals, dude. For reals. I'm
And now, your comments.
Well, maybe I don't have a lot of time for the comments. All right. It shocks me that Blanche says that they held back Epstein files that revealed injury, abuse, or death. What? Says Hollywood Cowgirl. Yeah, well, they've released a bunch of stuff that's pretty gross. I mean, I don't know if you can knock around on that. It's pretty brutal, man. Mutilation and worse. What makes Donald Trump think that if he remodels the Kennedy Center, that performing acts will perform there? Asked Velma. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, I don't think that he's
big shout out.
I don't think that he's remodeling the Kennedy Center with an end toward reopening the Kennedy Center. Here's what the Kennedy Center thing's about. The Kennedy Center, as I mentioned, attendance is dropping like a stone. Okay, the repudiation of him appointing himself, chairman of the board of the Kennedy Center and then populating the board with all of his people, that repudiation is coming in the way of performers dropping out of the Kennedy Center calendar, out of commitments that they've made. There essentially is a stink on what he's done to the Kennedy Center. So his view is, right, I'll just close it. It's not a plan to remodel it. I mean, I'm sure there is some deal where he's hiring contractors to come in and there's a bunch of grift involved and it's a bunch of guys who will also do something for him at Mar-a-Lago or they're taking care of the Trump family somehow, whatever. I don't know what the deal is, but I promise you the front and center issue was, how do I take care of this Kennedy Center problem? And here is how I take care of it. I just close it. And that is a classic Trump move, and he doesn't. It's in the rear view, man. I don't care. Why are we even talking about it anymore? I've closed it. Yeah, we're doing work there. We're going to make it look great. Beam Me Up Too, Scotty says, I bet you Harold heard of the dancing weatherman. Oh, Harold Ramis. This is about the Groundhog Day. I was telling it for those who just joined us. I was the technical consultant on the weatherman part when they were writing the script for Groundhog Day. I was a TV weather guy, and they came to me and they asked me if they could spend the day and sort of ask me questions about stuff. And so that's where this comes from. I bet you Harold heard of the dancing weatherman and said, I want to talk to this guy, and made the movie just to do that.
Who is having that conversation?
Well, we're having it now. Bust a move, Mark, says Beam Me Up Too, Scotty. Thank you for that.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. I hope Trevor Noah doesn't get sent to El Salvador, says Beam Me Up Too, Scotty. Yeah. I mean, I think it was just it felt like a body check, like a slam to the glass. I don't think he's actually going to sue Noah. He's too busy with other stuff, Don Lemon and all the rest. I thought that Ozzy tribute band was fantastic, says Ron Cook. I didn't see it. Did you see it?
Oh,
Kim?
yeah. They were really good. They were really good. I'm not a heavy metal person, but I was very impressed.
Tony is. Tony, did you see any of it? The Grammys last night? Did you see the Ozzy?
I was working, but I heard it was Post Malone and a couple of guys. They all, in Slash and stuff. They did War Pigs, so,
Yeah.
Tony's
happy.
They did a Black Sabbath song, and so.
Yeah. All right.
You had plenty of solo stuff, but they chose Black Sabbath, so hey, whatever. But it's a protest song, and that's why they did it. I know.
I see. Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
All right. I got the Zellman mints and really love them. I love it. This is from Jane Kingsley. Congrats on your new sponsor. They are sponsoring a winner. Oh, thank you, Jane Kingsley, and a big shout
Thanks,
out.
Tony.
And that does allow me to pivot perfectly to Zellman's, but I have to sneeze first. So excuse me for a
I
moment.
will tell you, as we pivot to Zellman's, that Jane is look how beautiful. What a great picture. You are correct. The Zellman's Minty Mouth is really, really, really good. And it's funny because I was talking to my niece who was taking some Zellman's Minty Mouth the other day, and she's sitting in classes at UCLA and says it just gives her confidence in class and working in groups and everything. So, if
you're interacting with people, it's a good thing to have. They're tiny capsules that are coated with this powerful mint on the outside. And it's a natural sugar. And it rolls around in your mouth. It gives you that kind of minty taste. And then you swallow the capsule. And inside is parsley seed oil and sunflower seed oil. And that works to neutralize a lot of these things that give you bad breath. And it works.
And it's
so
made in the
dual
USA.
action is the
Love it.
science behind it. Yeah.
Yeah. You see the little flag there? Made in the USA. I didn't know that. That's
Oh,
cool.
wow. There you go. Zellmans.com with the code MARKT gets you 15% off your first order. Zellmans.com. Order with MARKT off your first order, 15%. Now, Kim tells me about some email she's gotten, subsequent email.
I did.
But I would tell you, order with our discount code. You don't want any other codes or ordering. Stay with Mark T. And we'll continue our relationship with Zellman's because I guess everything is going well. So it's good. We've sent.
I love it's for everyone, from the young to the old. Like it helps everybody.
Yeah, I agree. If you have a child that you bounce on your knee, if you have grandkids that you bounce on, believe me, they want good breath from grandma and grandpa. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, Zellmans.com today. Mark T at checkout for 15% off your first order. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The first Monday of every month, we talk about issues that involve animals. We do it in a segment we call A Word About Animals.
Now, a word about animals on the Mark Thompson Show.
And our guide through the world of animals is Karen Dawn, she of dawnwatch.com. Also her Substack. We'll have links to that and her, I don't know if you're still doing you had a big Facebook following. Are you still rocking Facebook or not?
I'm going to get back to it. I've started posting there again. I was so devoted to Substack just getting up and going that I didn't really have time to do much Facebook, but I've had some complaints that it's missing. So
cool. Well, that's good. I mean, it's cool that you're getting back to it, and Tony's got it up in the chat. So
Just to say though, Substack's awesome, Mark. The level of interaction you get from people there compared to on Facebook, it's just like a completely different world. Really.
Yeah, we have to get a Substack going. It's just that it's very hard. I'm really overwhelmed, honestly, with this channel and trying to get things going, and it's just it's sad because I think it could be a lot. Not that it was about us, but I'm just saying I also look at and sort of lament, I'd like to get Substack going. Anyway, so now to you. It seems to me like there are a lot of animal issues that can be agreed upon, and that is to say when it comes to cruelty and when it comes to protecting animals and agreeing that, a certain thing that is done, for example, to animals, like most people aren't cool with that. And animal experimentation is one of those things. Like these animals that are used in these labs, it's a horribly cruel process. It's existed for decades. There's a money part of it too, which has really created this incentive for it to continue. I wonder if you could speak to it, because I know you have strong feelings about it as well.
Yeah, it's something that most people aren't cool with, but are generally under the impression that it's a necessary evil, or that's what we were told for decades and decades. And finally, that's starting to break that idea, that it's somehow, in order to save humanity, we have to do it. And so today I'm bringing you an op-ed straight from the Los Angeles Times. Beautiful headline: Animal testing slows medical progress. It's also morally wrong. And full disclosure here, it is written by Kevin Morrison, who is a dear long-term friend of mine, who I met about 20 years ago when I visited Stanford to interview J.M. Kitsia. Now, that is not Stanford. That's in the 7th Ray. And indeed, that's us 20 years ago.
Wow. Look at you two. Yeah.
And it's funny because Kevin still looks fabulous, but doesn't sound fabulous anymore. And I found that out, the opening line of his op-ed is I'm living with ALS. And he mentions that the general diagnosis is 2 to 5 years and that he's in year 2. That's the opening line of this beautiful op-ed he wrote. And I had actually hoped to get him on the show. He's a local to you guys up in the San Francisco area. He ran for office in Marin. For years and years, he's around my age, but for years and years, he was doing for fun hip hop dancing, and he was just the most active person in the world until a couple of years ago. And then there he is running for office in Marin there. Thanks, Tony, for sharing that. And then I haven't spoken to him for over a year, but I knew that about a year ago he got hit with ALS. And when I asked him about doing the show today, thinking it'd be lovely to have him on talking about his op-ed, and I texted him all the time, and it's back and forth, and it's quick. But he sent me a little video of his voice, and it made it very clear that he couldn't be doing an audio interview. It's it's so slow and it's so drawn out and it's so hard to understand.
Yeah, ALS is a brutal illness. Of
I
course.
was so shocked, especially as I said, because he and I text back and forth, and he said to me on this video, he just said that I'm as smart as I ever was, but I sound dumb. And it's just, and he doesn't, but it's just that it's so slow and it's hit him so hard.
That's part of the horror of it and the torture of it, that you
Is
are
that he's
completely sharp and
completely
yet your body and everything is shutting down, including your ability to speak. It's just
But interestingly, not his ability to text. It's still really fast. He's got fast. So
But it always
we're
is
in,
so. Yeah.
we're in touch. So he wrote this beautiful op-ed for the Los Angeles Times. He's written a few, and it's so interesting that when the new administration first came to office and they started closing down a lot of research, he started writing, was so terrified that research was getting shut down. But he always did hate animal testing. And the more he researched himself, the more he realized that the animal testing side of things getting shut down is freaking awesome. And what this op-ed is about is that they're finally starting to move away from animal testing. And there's a line that really moved me in it, which I'll read to you. It says, for the 30 million Americans living with chronic or fatal diseases, these advances are tantalizing glimpses of a future in which we might not have to suffer and die while waiting for systems that don't work. And he writes that after describing some of the stuff they're doing with AI and some of the stuff they're doing in petri dishes, taking cells from actual human ALS sufferers and working with them. And he mentions in this op-ed that during the AIDS crisis, AIDS activists pushed really hard to forego some of the animal testing that's generally called for in order to get medications out, which really, really helped during the AIDS crisis and have made such a profound difference to.
So when he's talking about, just to be clear with the audience, so when he's talking about these changes may represent a faster path to cures and to modalities of treatment, he's talking about the pipeline of human-centric testing as opposed to the testing or as you suggested, AI or real cell, human cell research, as opposed to the ridiculous and completely ham-fisted and utterly absurd testing and incredibly cruel. That's the reason it has my interest. Right. Cruel testing on animals. 90%, and he notes this in the editorial, 90% of the stuff that is effective in animal populations, medications, etc., treatments, that stuff is not, 90% of it, effective with the human population. 90%. How do you keep doing this and subjecting these innocent creatures to this cruelty? They grow up in labs. It's a horror show every minute of every day for these creatures. How do you possibly maintain it if 90% of your research is completely absurd when it comes to applications to the human population? And you know what I always say, if something doesn't make sense, it's about what? Money.
Right.
Big money underwrites all of this, and it offends all of us in our humanity that this shit continues.
Right. Right, absolutely. And that's what he's talking about when you mentioned, he mentioned and you mentioned 90% of the animal things that come out for animal testing don't even work. So we wait years and years for these animal tests, and then they bring it to human testing, and oops, it didn't work. So it's just,
and that slows the cures is the point. That slows the treatment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he mentions Eric Dane. I think a lot of your listeners would know of Eric Dane from Grey's Anatomy, beautiful young actor who now is also suffering with ALS. And he has come out and said, hey, test on me. I mean, if I can go out, if I'm going to go out, I'd rather go out helping somebody. So, and then it's funny because a couple of decades ago, Richard Pryor said exactly the same thing. He was suffering with MS, and he said, test on me. So this is what Kevin's op-ed is about. It's about test on me, and that's how he ends his op-ed. I want to go out helping somebody. And B, thank heavens we're moving away from animal testing, because all it does is jam up the works so that people can make lots and lots of money from it. The universities make money from it, and the drug companies make money from it. and it slows everything down. And thank heavens they're moving away from it. He also mentions that with COVID, because it was seen as such a massive emergency, they got special dispensation not to do all of those animal tests that they usually do to bring out new vaccines. And so as a result, we got a COVID vaccine in a year rather than in however long it would have taken if they'd had to go through all the animal tests first. And he says, please, let's do this with everything, including the ALS drugs that he is so desperately waiting for.
I love that you focused on this today. It's something I think we can all agree on, most of us. I mean, as I say, I think it appeals to the humanity. This has nothing to do with being vegan or farm animals, nothing. This is all about these creatures being used in experiments that don't work anyway. It's not effective anyway. So why do you do it? It's about money. And I love that you mentioned the universities because, yeah, there are whole university research programs that are funded by big pharma, and this animal testing is part of that funding. And everybody's getting rich on it. And that's the only reason that these creatures are being subjected to this, because the research isn't worth anything in
when
terms
you
of
say
applying it to it.
the universities are funded by big pharma, they're just as much funded by taxpayer dollars, and that's what the is going away
Government
now.
dollars. Thank you. You're right. Yeah.
You know, we're paying for this,
Which is even more galling.
That keeps these, and what the money is paying for is to keep these departments open. That's what.
The Dawn Watch Substack is up live and waiting for you. We'll have a link to it under this video, and follow Karen Dawn across the universe of social media wherever she shows up, and you'll find her here the first Monday of every month. Thank you, Karen Dawn.
Great to see you.
See you soon. And that's a word about animals.
Join the flock. Again next time for A Word About Animals on The Mark Thompson Show.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
Who's Mark Thompson?
The Mark Thompson Show.
I can't even tell you how delighted I am with our guests today. They were really great. Let me check the poll. We had a flash poll up today, and I want to see
it's a Mark Thompson Show flash poll.
Yeah. What's the biggest problem with the Epstein file release? Too much redaction, 36%. Missing key names, 7%. But 57% of you voted for no accountability. And isn't that true? It's kind of what we were talking about with Sarah Kendzior, the fact that there's a sense that just sort of we bring it all to the daylight, and then we have that big finale, you know, where they arrest the bad guys and the corrupt people and the cover-up people, and everything's fine. The victims have their day of justice. That just doesn't seem to be happening here. I think there's collective outrage and collective, there's a distraught public
humiliation for the people who were implicated. But where is the big finale? It's missing. So they get away with it?
On some level, the answer is yes. I mean, just seeing the way in which Jeffrey Epstein was given that year with the supervised release, where he only had to go sleep at the jail for a year. That was the Acosta deal that he made in Florida. I mean, and those were heinous acts that he was, if you read the criminal complaint, what he was guilty of is really brutal. And you're just giving him a year? So that was the thing that became so controversial that Acosta actually had to drop out of the first Trump administration. Well, that deal that was made, you know, is part of the kind of sweetheart deal that Jeffrey Epstein is used to getting. And that's also why he didn't actually take his own life. He knew that there's a way we can navigate our way out of this. I'm the most connected guy on earth. I promise you, he was suicided. By the summer, you won't be able to mention Epstein in the same sentence as Trump, or you will be imprisoned, says Rob Lowe. Hey, we're going that way. We're going that way. Louis says, thanks, Green Day and Bad Bunny.
And now, your comments.
Yes, for keeping Donald Trump out of California on Super Bowl Sunday. It'll be embarrassing to see him rip the Lombardi trophy away from the winners. I will say that that moment of Bad Bunny last night, that was pretty good. I saw that clip with Bad Bunny, who won the Grammy. And he had an appeal to not be lost in the anger toward the other side, to try to get to some kind of love, is what he said.
Yeah.
It's what you expect from an artist. It reminded me of kind of like the way there's Bad Bunny. Yeah.
He said love is stronger than hate.
Thank
And that
you.
it's easy to hate right now. That it's what we're seeing is so awful and that it's easy. But he said hate breeds hate. And the only thing stronger than hate is love.
Thank you. That's it. And it's so wonderful that he could have that sentiment. Apparently, despite the fact that Trump has, turned his turret of anger onto Bad Bunny, right? So it's tough when when the president's dogging you, to still come up with that. So, anything else I need to do before I leave? I wanted to let me just see something. I had a couple of stories, many stories that I didn't get to today. But many stories we did get to. Remember, we had a producer in my earliest days at KGO. I had a producer I really liked, super smart guy. I called him Evil Dave because Dave would always, because it was just a character. I was trying to build this kind of, he was just not evil at all, of course. But anyway, Dave would always say, because at the end of a show, I go, we didn't get to this, we didn't get to that. He goes, Mark, don't tell people what you didn't do. Tell people what you did do. And I thought, that's a great note. He's absolutely 100% right. And yet I still do it. So,
You still do it.
Yeah.
Here's a story we didn't get to. I thought this was interesting. There's a candidate running for the mayor of, I think it's Long Beach, and his name is Rogelio Martinez, and he is trying to enlist gangs to help, I guess, thwart ICE is what is happening here. He posted a video calling on 55 local gangs to show up at City Hall for a peaceful protest to take back the city.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess bring in the when you can have city officials, I mean, for running for office, connecting with criminal gangs.
Yeah, I don't know if I would. I don't know if I endorse that, but
I don't know if I do either.
Yeah, it's a wild idea.
It's a wild idea, but it just might work.
No,
and something good. There's
I don't endorse it.
Remember our 5-year-old with the bunny hat? His
Little
his
Liam.
name is Liam.
Liam
Liam Conejo Ramos and his dad are now back in Minnesota.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because they are back, and I was thinking, boy, that was public outcry, of course, and one of the reasons it was public outcry was because of that picture of him in that little bunny hat, right? Was it a bunny hat or and I thought to myself, man, he's not wearing that bunny hat, and I wonder if there's even any public outcry. Or put another way, boy, if there's no picture of that kid's still rotting in a Texas detention center.
Think of all the kids who didn't have the cute bunny hat and are still sitting in there.
That's really what I'm saying. Exactly. Adorable kid, but I'm glad that he's back. But I wish that all the kids who are being affected by this and traumatized by this for life could be returned, because it's just wrong. And the way it's being done is just so very wrong. So, that was kind of a happy way to end the show,
Yeah, it was great. I loved it.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I know. I love it when I bring everybody down. Kim tries to bring everybody up by telling a story about how little Liam is back. But I point out all the other stuff about the story so that you don't just concentrate on the superficial happiness. You can live in the reality that is underpinning all of these policies, you see.
I need a sip of Coachella Valley tea right now.
That's why I'm here, everyone, okay? You bring me the happy, and I'll tell you how it really conceals the horror behind it. Yeah. Tomorrow, the wonderful David K. Johnston and a special guest.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
The founder of Sweet 106 Bakery.
Bye-bye.
I know, it's a great origin story. You will like her, and they're our newest partners. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.